couple of things that came to me this morning. Sunim and I were talking a little bit before, of course. And the thing that came up for me was about our practice is getting to know ourselves, and getting to know ourselves is to resolve ourselves. And this is this practice that we continually are making. And for the average person, an ordinary human being, especially when they're experiencing some sort of stress related to uncertainty, their first response is usually fight or flight. It's instinctual. And unfortunately for the modern human being, most of the things that they fear are imaginary and things that they made up and are not real, and they're in their heads. Now, it's not that there aren't real threats and real things to be concerned about, of course, but knowing the difference. So why do we have such an intimate group here? Because for most people, they look outside of themselves continually over and over and over again for some sort of solution to this issue, this problem of self. And it's never discovered that way, actually. It's just distraction after distraction. And then there are those who are smart enough that know that that deluded mind is there and is there for the taking. And they find ways to use it to their advantage. Because again, they're still thinking in the realm of fight or flight. Either I have it or I don't. This duality. So as a practice, we come here and we sit because we want to resolve ourselves. We want to be better human beings. We want to experience a better, more fulfilling life. And that's why we do this. So Sunim and I'll just give you a little anecdote that's something really interesting that occurred to me. When I was at his temple, I noticed that in our practice, they use the chukpi instead of the bell, right? I started out using it, but they do this. They rub it before they hit it at the end of a session, right? So people aren't shocked into the fact that here it comes. Well, the reason we do this is because I got complaints that this was so disturbing to people when I hit it at the end of the meditation. That
it wakes me up. Terrible.
It's like, oh my goodness. I thought that was great and was cool. But I got so many complaints, I decided, okay, we'll use the bell. I mean, that's sort of Japanese kind of tradition, right?
And Chinese.
And Chinese, yeah. But in Korea, they only use this. But I learned at his temple that they go like this before they hit it. So you can hear that and you know it's coming. It's a beautiful little thing. So, just as an anecdote of the way inviting different teachers and different Buddhist perspectives into your practice can teach you something. Having Sunim here is a really special opportunity to open up a little bit more, get out of your habitual energy of how you do things and see another way. So by asking him questions, by exploring how does he do his practice, what does he offer as a way of pursuing what it is we're doing, which is getting to know ourselves. So the Dharma is the Dharma. So here we are, and here's Sunim, and I would like to turn it over to him, but I want to encourage you to ask questions, because that's the way to really discover what it is you need to discover for your practice. So please ask questions.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
Before I take any questions, please have them ready. Let me show you some more tricks with the chukpi. It's really amazing little tool. So we not only rub this before the end and the beginning of the sitting, but If somebody misbehaves, like you're not supposed to clear your throat during sitting. We don't do that. Also, we don't fidget around, we don't move around. So when that happens, because it does, we are humans. So on the practice leader in Korean Ipsung does this. Could you hear that? Michael, Nancy, could you hear that? That means, hey, don't.
I like that.
Yes. And everybody hears it, you know, and you just straighten yourself in your position, and that's it. So how do we come back to this moment of warning? Because Bill talked about threats before. What amazes me and puzzles me really, really to the core of my being, that we strive to live in a safer world. America, safety first, safety, 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 safety. And it's getting less and less safe, more and more risks. And suppose we would take more risks, wouldn't we live in a safer world? Because we would face it. So yeah, we need safety, but not blindness. And cause and effect as a deep teaching, I think that's very clear, both inside and outside. And what's the biggest risk? To ask the question, who am I? Why? Because you will change. And that's the risk most people don't want to take, instead they blame the world if their self is not in the right order. I feel bad, your problem. My life is a mess, is because of society and my parents and my upbringing. And they blame the circumstances and their previous karma for not seeing their own mind, how we create this world. It's a co-created world. We have now 8 billion participants. We're not doing so well. So now, having set this tone wonderfully with my friend Abbot Rauschenberger, I would like to welcome your questions. Anything.
So the other day, Callan was saying that sometimes he feels like the world is a dream, and that when he's dreaming, that's when it feels more like the real world. And so I said back to him, like, well, you know, it is kind of a dream, because what you said, right? Like, we're all in this together and we're co-creating it together. And that's, so you have to imagine the kind of world that you want to be in. But I think maybe explaining that a little more for him, or giving some insight onto that kind of concept that he's thinking about.
I'm going to give you a very good example. Your mom is sitting right next to you. Is she a dream? Sometimes you hope she would be. When she gives you chores and tasks, you know, sets you really strict conditions when she has to. So we say in this world, in the sensory realm, if you can see it, feel it, touch it, think it, have some emotions about it, we call that reality in the sense of a phenomenon. So this is real because I can use it, I can touch it, okay? But in Asia, in the old traditions, not just Zen, but any non-dualistic tradition, anything which appears and disappears and subject to causes and conditions was considered illusory because it doesn't stay. It's subject to change, causality, decay, birth, and death. So they called anything in the sensory realm illusory because they were looking for something that is not changing, not born, not dying. Okay? So only our true nature in that sense is real, but it doesn't appear, doesn't disappear. You cannot see it, cannot hear it, cannot taste, smell, touch, or think it. So that's kind of the tough one, that reality. That reality, we call it original mind. This original mind is clear like space, clear like a mirror. And in this mirror, you can see the sensory realm. You can see this is made of wood. This is copper, you know, okay? I have Will sitting right next to me and the three of you in front of us. That's not a dream. He's very real. I like him being real. Okay? So,
I'm not so sure.
Perceive what you see, hear, taste, smell, touch, and think, and feel, and say, or do. Right here, right now. Don't call it a dream. Don't call it reality. See it for what it is. And in Zen, we say, it's just like that. The mind wants to classify it. Okay, permanent, impermanent, dream, real, illusion, truth. But see how it works, what it is. Okay? As it is, we call it thusness. It's just like that. The sky is blue. Not permanent, not impermanent. But the clouds cover it completely. We can forget that the sky is originally blue. Okay? But it's always there. The clouds are not permanent. They always come and go. But there will always be clouds appearing, staying, and disappearing. So they never completely go out of the sky. We just don't know where they are. Okay? So in this clear mirror mind, we perceive this world as it is. And the way it works, okay, is controlled by the universal law called Dharma. So karma is controlled by Dharma. That means if I hit this, it gives a sound. That's physical reality, okay? If I don't hit it, it doesn't give a sound. We human beings are way more complex than a bell, but we act like that. We work like that, the same way. So you get what you want, you're happy. You don't get what you want, you're unhappy. Right? Just like the bell. Hit it, boom, happy. Not hit it, I didn't get my treat today. Too much carbs, I have to do more exercise, unhappy. Okay? So what's our job? What's our life's mission in this realm? It's very dual, happy, unhappy. I like, I don't like. What's our way? What's our direction? And now we come to the teaching itself. We can take very good direction, understanding ourselves, attaining who we are, why we are born to our parents. What's our life's goal? In fact, we should get down to business as soon as we can walk and talk. It's never too early. Big homework, big chores. Okay? Good. More questions?
Koan practice.
Koan practice.
Yes. Can you describe perhaps personally what it's meant to you?
I think it's the biggest mental challenge human beings can have on this planet in a lot of respects. So let's go with the word first. Kongan in Korean, Kungan in Chinese, and Koan in Japanese literally meant public record in China. So they didn't have Xerox machines, so they copied everything by hand with brush and ink and rice paper. And when the copy was made, then they put the original and the copy side by side, and they put a stamp so that it would cover both edges. So one half of the stamp was on the original, the other half was on the copy. So when there was any doubt that it was an imperial edict or some high official made this, then they brought back the copy and said, where's the original? They put the two together, and if the stamps, the two halves of the stamp, gave a whole and it was authentic, then it was considered correct. So that the copy is identical to the original in terms of content. Now, let's go back to Shakyamuni Buddha 2,500 years ago. At that time, attaining non-self or the illusory nature of your ego, that was enough. That was enough for liberation. They wrote that 84,000 sutras, and for 1,000 years there was a lot of sanghas, and Hinayana, Mahayana appeared, and lots of branches in the tradition. But 1,000 years passed, and enter Bodhidharma, and it turned out that the sutras won't cut it anymore. It's necessary but insufficient. People get very knowledgeable, very clever, very pure, understood all the Buddha's teaching, but still they didn't get enlightenment. What was the reason? They become attached to thinking, attached to the sutras. It's like being attached to chocolate. You don't need the chocolate so much as the chocolate factory, how this chocolate was made. So we didn't need the Buddha's word. We needed the Buddha's mind. We still do. So in order to do that, we have to transcend the what we call the orthodox, which is the established knowledge. Orthos, established. Doxa is knowledge. So the orthodox. And in order to do that, we use the paradox, the one that goes beyond knowledge. So it turns out that if you don't stop your mind from thinking, you don't attain this clear mirror mind. Clear like space, clear like mirror, original, true nature. Sutras won't help you. They give you a very nice view, very good system, lots of knowledge. Truly educated people were in monasteries. Even statesmen moved into monasteries, became monks for a few years, then got out. In Thailand, it's still common practice. 1 year monkhood for a lot of youth, okay? But if you don't embrace the paradox, you cannot go beyond thinking. In Zen, we say, if you want to pass through this gate, there's the gate of awakening, which we chant gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhiswa. The gate, the gate, is the gate of no thinking. Okay? So if you want to pass through this gate, you cannot give rise to dualistic thoughts. It's a very, very narrow passage. So how does Kongan practice come into this? So the old enlightened masters, mostly from the Tang dynasty, which you can see in our 208 Kongan books, including later Koreans and some Westerners subsequently, they teach questions and answers which cannot be handled by your dualistic mind. You have to go beyond the orthodox, embrace the paradox, and shut down your IQ and EQ so that your no-thinking mind, your energy, original energy, would become increasing, and your notion of self decreasing. And when this energy reaches critical mass, it fires. We call that intuition. Intuition is a direct manifestation of your true nature. And when you get a Kongan question, you learn the basics, how to handle it. That's a cognitive process. But it's like the barrel of a gun, and there's another 1.5 miles for the bullet to fly. So there's very little cognitive foundation, and then your intuition has to be built up, trained in a way that you would always use your clear mirror mind, not your dualistic thinking patterns and emotional patterns. So question and answer, when they match like the original and the copy, then the minds are considered identical in terms of authenticity, not in terms of personal karma, but in terms of mind quality. And that's when you see what we call Dharma combat. So the senior student goes to the Zen master and asks, what is the ultimate Buddha's teaching? And he gets beaten, And if he goes into despair, then he leaves. And if he doesn't, because he understands the rules of Dharma combat, he says, only that. Because by no thinking, you come back to the essence that has originally no name, no form. And in this mirror, the truth is reflected. So after only that, you're supposed to say the sky is blue and the trees are green, because this is the truth. And the third leg in this tripod is the function. So Kongan teaching tests your intuition, how you attain substance, perceive a truth, and manifest correct function. Okay? That depends on another tripod: situation, relationship, and function. Okay? And to make it even more interesting, in Kongan practice, we have 4 kinds of like this or suchness. Okay? 1 is 0, without like this, without suchness. That's for those who don't have a self. Because we have other beings in this universe that do not have a problem with themselves. Like I said yesterday, dogs do not have an identity problem. Cats cannot act in an uncatly way, okay? They're always cats because this chakra is sealed. Their program is fixed. But we, humans, we don't understand who we are. Yet we have a notion of ourselves, more or less conscious. These days, less conscious. So if we don't attain our substance, then this self is not resolved. Then this mirror is not clear. Then we don't understand our way. So Kongan practice helps us attain who we truly are, perceive the world as it is, without preconceptions, projections, dualistic attitude, without selfishness. Okay? So then our original job, original human being's job becomes clear. So this is the system as it goes. And personally, this was the only mental task that I found so difficult that I went into it 34 years ago, and I'm not done. I'm not done. There are Kongans that I teach and still new aspects can emerge. How you perceive it, how you see it, how you teach it. And sometimes there are Kongans with multiple answers, and there are Kongans with only one answer. Okay? And that teaches you flexibility. One of the biggest contradictions, and I said earlier paradox, so look for contradictions and paradoxon here. If you have ox and oxen, then you have paradoxon, paradoxon. Okay, so look for the contradiction. For instance, one of them was that we teach don't know mind, no thinking mind. And at first it sounds stupid, totally stupid. And yet I've seen the most intelligent human beings in my life in the realm of don't know in Zen practice. Why? Because if you attain that there is no absolute thought, your mind becomes very flexible. There is no absolute thought because if it appears, becomes a phenomenon, it's relative. It's subject to cause and effect, subject to impermanence, subject to conditioned existence. How could it be absolute? That's where dogmatism goes to the dustbin, all right? So if you see that all thoughts are relative, it makes you flexible. And these guys, these Zen monks, they were really happy, clever, not irresponsible. They took responsibilities. And at age 80, they were lucid and clear. Okay? Just because they did this, embraced the paradox, embraced intuition, didn't attach to thinking. They were not tied and bound by intellectual systems. They could use any one of them. Also, emotionally, they were intelligent too. Not like in family life, like in a group setting or Sangha life. So in 1992, February, I was in Poland, sitting a retreat with like 40 people. And there was an American, at that time, she was already, I think, Zen master, Jane. And I met her before in the States. And actually, I didn't. I met her later in the States after this. And I started with Kongan practice just the year before, in 91. In fact, 1990 December, so it's almost 91. And this was in Poland, lots of more senior students than me. And I'm getting into, like, if it's a 10-level system, level 4. So it's getting thicker. That's when IQ and EQ, they drop the ball. Your SQ, your spiritual intelligence, your intuitive capability has to pick it up. And for that, you have to practice. There's no way around. Your IQ or EQ cannot compute that anymore. So what happened is I'm going for this Kongan interview. We reflect each other's mind. And of course, I miss. My answer is wrong. And Jane says, you won't solve this. You don't have what it takes to solve this Kongan. You just don't have it in you. And hello, I was railroaded for nothing. And in Europe, it works different than in the States. We are kind of more vulnerable, okay? I leave the Kongan interview room. I go down the stairs and there's a little waiting station, like with a kind of balcony style, but it was closed by windows. And it's the outskirts of Warsaw, flat. Totally, just pine trees and this flat sky, the flat clouds. And I take a deep breath there because I was erased. And I looked out of the window and talk about dreams, illusion, young man. I've seen immediately a World War II movie with all the tanks, all the bombs, all the aircraft, artillery, infantry, just destroying everything, including the Zen Center, including me, including everything. It was superimposed so well, like in a Hollywood movie, like Saving Private Ryan, okay? I see this movie. I see how my mind superimposes this whole thing. And I said, gosh, I'm angry. I'm angry. So deep. I couldn't even perceive that I am angry because I had been railroaded into a wreck that I don't have what it takes to solve it. And I said, how did this happen? How come I didn't see this before? Then I vowed that no kongans will ever be a hindrance to me, because now I woke up to a mind process which I haven't seen before. And that's why it's important. The solution is secondary. What you discover in yourself, that's primary.
Yeah.
So what happens when you solve a kongan? You get another one. Level 4, you get level 5. But by the time you get to level 10, your self-image changes 10,000 times over, because you can see so many karmas. Kongan practice is like provoking your dualistic mind into unprecedented reactions. It's good that it's in a lab setting. It's in an interview room. It's the only really non-judgmental environment. Of course, Jane was testing me. She didn't judge me. She found my weak spot. Okay, boom, she hit it. And I appreciated that. Later, I was present at her transmission ceremony when she became Zen master. We became good friends. So it was amazing to see the first deep effect of Kongan practice. And I'm in. I would have never, ever experienced this depth so quick without this kind of deep drill of Kongan practice. It bypasses your ego in such a way that you cannot even imagine. Brings up karma from your subconscious in a totally unpredictable and indefensible way. Because when you see it, you cannot pretend you didn't see it. And that's why there's very few of us doing this. Because it seems like walking in circles. It seems like there's only trash coming up. It seems you get something, then you have a more difficult task to achieve. And if we see that there's a huge byproduct called clarity, then we persist and we go on. Because clarity and compassion and wisdom is the real byproduct of Kongan practice. And that's why we keep doing that. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I have just a little
Please.
point to add to it.
Okay.
I loved specifically that this is about intuition. And
Yeah.
as you described your experience of koan practice, of course, it's a practice. It's within, it's the teaching. I've often said that life, for me at least, is like a koan practice, because I keep coming up against unsolvable things in my dualistic thinking.
Talk
And
about
when
family life. Oh, yeah.
And when intuition interjects,
Yeah.
I've had that experience with you in of course, an interview room.
Oh, yeah. That's the lab.
And yeah, in the lab.
Yeah.
And also in life. So it perpetuates in life once it happens in the interview room.
It does. And it reflects in life, because you solve something or you're working on something, it doesn't matter actually, because if you solved it, you get tested. If it's in process, then the world helps you get another view. So the problem you're working on gets reflected in your karma outside, because your mind, in fact, your subconscious projects it into space, and you get something to actually test you. Yeah. So there's lots of stories with it, but better taste it for yourself.
So I'm, at the same time, I'm really excited to have Sunim here for 10 days.
Me too.
When it's over, it's not over.
Yeah, that's one. And, second, it's sometimes people believe that don't know is the lack of information.
Yeah.
I would say, in this sense, don't know or no thinking is the absence of ignorant views.
Yeah.
It's very different. So when people are mortified because they don't know the answer, I said, great, come back to this don't know. This don't know gets stronger, stronger, stronger. That means energy going stronger and information goes weaker, your sense of self, okay? Then this don't know begins to work for you. begins to operate in a way that you progress on the bodhisattva path. And this don't know, just keep it. And out of this don't know, as I've said in the intro, when it reaches a certain level, it's like nuclear fission. Boom, it fires. And that's when intuition appears. There's absolutely no other way to get to this level than refrain from dualistic thought. And when you do that, then in a tight situation, like you have a spouse, you have a child, etc., sometimes the interaction is very stressful, very tense, and you don't know what to do. You feel helpless. What's the usual reaction? Fight or flight. As you heard it, both of them are wrong. Don't flee, don't fight. Sit with your don't know. Look at your beloved and say, I love you. I just don't know what to do now. And out of that don't know comes a miracle. But you have to attain that. There's no way around it. And I know a little, but I hide it. I have an idea. I suppress it. No. You have to come back to this complete don't know. Anger is gone. Helplessness is gone. Futility is gone. Illusion is gone, because I came back to this real moment of not knowing. And then there's reflection. Something gets, we connect again. Because if I don't know, maybe the person in front of me also admits that she doesn't know. And through this don't know, we connect. Something happens. This mind-to-mind connection. Oh, there's a channel. There's an opening. Maybe a solution appears. If not, karma repeats itself. Always, before it becomes conscious and we can disengage from it. Traumas repeat themselves so that we would become conscious by them. We call that get enlightenment out of suffering. If you don't have this path, you only suffer, make other people suffer, they make you suffer, around. So there are two kinds of lives on this earth. Suffering and suffering with brief intervals of fleeting happiness, or suffering and enlightenment and less suffering and more enlightenment. It's our choice. It's our choice.
Say the part, the absence of, what was it again?
So don't know is not the lack of information, but the absence of ignorant views. So if they don't want your help, don't be mortified. Don't feel bad about it. You can still have the tray from which they can pick what they need, what they think they need, if they hit or bang their heads against the wall. Direction is everything. So if they want to take risks, fall off the cliff, that's okay. It's their decision. But usually they are not totally alone in this world. They are connected to some other people whom they take with them directly or indirectly into this journey of peril and risk. You can ask that question, say, hey, you're doing this not just to yourself. You're doing this to your wife, your husband, your daughter, your son. How do you think they would respond if you have this venture and it goes bad? So sometimes this risk-taking is very selfish. And if it's selfish, you have a chance to open up that connection. I've seen many addicts, many people who walked off the cliff with alcohol, with drugs. I was teaching Zen in a detox facility for 2 years off and on, like every 2 months. And I realized that those folks, they went off the cliff way before. They got cleaned up sufficiently physically that they could take some meditation instructions. I had to realize that these folks, they don't want to be clear. They want the next trip, cheap, free of any kind of criminal risks. And they were interested in meditation exactly in that way. Their direction was how to get high without the substance. Can I teach them how to get high without the substance? So they could forget about their own self, their own karma, their own suffering. I said, no, I can only wake you up to your suffering. I can only show you how karma works. And you can only explore yourself, this miserable, everyday, run-down, ex-addict self. And there's no way to bypass that. Kind of correctional facility, prison. I had the same chance, and those guys, they were listening more, but some of them got out, during my frequent trips to Szeged fourth largest city in Hungary, they never became students. They just wanted to be smarter, how to avoid the rule of law. So similar. In other words, you can have your beautiful bodhisattva heart, but some people will not listen to you because their direction is not wake up and help all beings. Their direction is how to get an easy access to what I want in life and avoid the dangers, avoid the threats, etc. And that's it. Not many people are actually ready for the path that you suggest. And they have to suffer more before they wake up. It's a sad fact of life. But
follow-up question to that. So Nancy talked about it on like an individual level. And, you said, we're going to have more suffering until we wake up. What does that look like on like a collective level? Like what's happening in the world right now? Because there seems to be a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
But what are, what is one individual supposed to be? What is a society?
I think we can break down suffering into three factors, which is it's in the Tibetan wheel of life also. Ignorant views, that's the snake. Greed, that's the pig. And anger, it's the cock-a-doodle-doo. Okay? So, if you see more greed and anger in the world, that means there's more suffering in the world, and it's always based on ignorant views. Ignorant views of who we think we are, who the other persons are in our lives, and in the fold of 8 billion Homo sapiens, biggest joke on the planet, we call ourselves sapiens, bound to wisdom. What are we doing? We cannot even wipe our collective butt. We haven't done that. Otherwise, we would be having tea with more intelligent beings, but we are really far from that. So we call that group karma. You can establish the group boundaries with a country, with a nation, with a civilization, with a culture, or the collective 8 billion. And our output is really miserable because we are so ignorant that we believe that by causing suffering to other people, we can be happy. Or taking away things from other people, we can be rich. Or by exerting some external power, we pretend to be strong and others will become weak. And we call that the samsaric cycle of suffering. Okay? Kill and be killed. Deprive and be deprived. All the way. These three qualities, ignorant views of self, and the result is the overly greedy, too much creation, and the destructive, the anger type of reaction. Both are wrong. Both are wrong. And unless we wake up, we'll keep repeating this over and over again. So when they asked Chong An Sunim, sir, why is it that it's like this? Why are people not more awakened? And he just said, more suffering is necessary. So the question is, how much suffering is necessary before people are willing to wake up? And that's the question inside. At what level of suffering am I ready to let go of my notion of self, of my ego, of who I think I am, or I think I should be, but I am not? Okay? So it's always generated by a sense of self, how we react to the world. And this is the thing we are least bound to change. We believe this self is absolute, especially in the West, where God created man in his image. It's preposterous. We don't understand ourselves. We don't understand God. And the problem is we create suffering for each other based on these false notions. Michael, you say that silence is better than holiness. That's what you pointed out. Fantastic. But, sometimes I hold a little pause during the talks. They ask me a question, like a substantial question. I stay quiet. The tension in the room within 30 seconds is beyond description. Why? Because our intellect is so hungry. We want to know. We want to know more. We want to know better. We want to know better than anyone else. And when this don't know hits, and all of this is erased, it takes a very seasoned mind to stay focused and calm and clear and aware. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
Glass.
So thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here.
Nancy,
Appreciate it.
Michael, thanks for being with us. And also Andrea, Dan, and Kalen. Kellen, thank you.
Be well.